Chapter 30. In the morning, Desmond had gazed over her city in the light of the rising sun. Now this evening she watched it in the glow of the sun's fading light. Standing at the edge of Tesco's cave, gazing over the meadow and foothills, she made out the outline of her little kingdom on the horizon. From this distance she saw how small it was, how insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Yet it held everything she held there. Her people, her parents, her friends. She'd do anything for it, give anything to protect it. Tears pulled in her eyes as she watched her beloved city. If only she could. "We need to leave." Sevrin approached her, his eyes on the horizon. "It's getting late and—" He turned to her face. "Your Highness, are you all right?" "Oh, Sevrin." Desmond quickly wiped the tears from her eyes. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." Sevrin studied her. The sun hit his shape, tracing his jawline just so. While not as chiseled as Galloway's, his face still held a strong line. As his gentle brown eyes searched hers, Desmond realized how much she loved this particular shade of brown. She averted her eyes. "I'm simply lost in thought." "Lost about what?" Desmond's eyes beheld her city again, seeming to glow in the setting sun. "This morning, when I watched the sunrise, I never dreamed I'd be having tea with a dragon." "Honestly, neither did I." Severn glanced back at the dragon, who was cleaning up the tea things. "I hope you'll hurry, though," he muttered. "The gates." Instead, this morning I was pondering if I was a good leader. After hearing Tesco's story and having tea with him, now I know. Desmond felt tears slip down her cheeks. I'm a terrible princess. No, you aren't. My parents left me in charge, and every decision I've made since Tesco flew into the picture has been wrong. Desmond leaned against the cave wall. I gave Galloway my blessing to trap him, and it resulted in the awful wound on his leg. I so shamed my knights when I scolded them for not acting to protect the people that they rushed in to face Tesco and were badly injured. Now I've given them a directive to slay him, and I find he's the nicest creature I ever could have met. How could a good leader make so many mistakes?" "I don't think you've made any mistakes, Your Highness," Severn said. "You acted with the information you had. As you said, it would be reprehensible not to act to protect your people if you had the means to do so." "My actions could have destroyed Tesco, Severn. It caused him real pain." "And he destroyed my livelihood before he got to know me. How are you to know Tesco was intelligent and kind?" "You knew. You saved him." "I didn't know he could talk what I did." Severn scratched his hair. "I thought once I set him free he'd eat me." "And you still rescued him?" Severn shrugged. He gazed out across the meadow toward the city. "Do you know how I know you're a good leader, Your Highness? You changed my father's mind." "How so?" "My father has always held a grudge against nobility. I'm not sure why." Severn smiled at her. "But he told me you're a princess he could follow. That is what the people in Lauphah think of you. We'd follow you anywhere." Desmond let her eyes drop to the cave floor while she digested this information. "But why? Why would you follow someone who makes such terrible decisions?" "Because of this." Severn stepped aside. He turned to Tesco, still cleaning up his cave. "When you met a dragon, you didn't let your fear stop you. Once you understood he was a creature who had thoughts and opinions, you let your preconceived notions go and listened to him." He turned to Desmond and smiled at her. "I don't know any other person in the entire world who would take tea with a dragon. It's how you've always been. You've never once looked down at anyone. You've looked after all your people the same. It's one of the things I love about you." Desmond snickered. "So Tesco is telling the truth. He loved me then." "I do," said Severn, without a trace of jest in his eyes. "With all my heart, even though I know I'm not worthy of you." "Do not underestimate your worth, Severn. I was only able to listen to him because of you." Desmond gave him a smile. "Thank you. There is no one else on earth who would be so kind as to rescue a dragon, except perhaps one other." "Who is that?" "Someone I met a long time ago." Desmond gazed off into the distance. "When I was 10, almost 11, a boy trespassed on my father's orchard. I say he trespassed, but it was all innocent fun. He was so kind to me, and acted so nobly, and taught me how to climb trees. I'll never forget him." Her smile faded as she clutched her heart. "My dear Sir Apple, I miss him so. Severn, you remind me a lot of him." Severn stared at her a moment, mouth agape. You remember that?" "It's my most precious memory." "She remembers." Severn set a hand on his forehead. "She actually remembers." "Wait a moment." Desmond leaned in close to him. "Were you one of the boys words that came with him. Do you know of Sir Apple's whereabouts? I wish to see him again. Please, Sevrin, can I find him? Your Highness, Sevrin pointed to himself. Wait a moment. Desimone let her eyes rove over his face, landing on his hair and then his eyes. Of course, it's you! How could I have been so dunce? No wonder you look so familiar to me. Sir Apple! She threw her arms around him. It's so good to see you. I've missed you. Severn stiffly wrapped his arms around her. Once he did, however, he held her gently and closely. Look at you! Desimone stepped back out of his embrace. You've grown so much. She examined him up and down. You're quite handsome now. Am I? Severn sort of puffed out his chest, though Desimone doubted he realized he was doing it. You've always been beautiful. Desimone let her smile fade. You used to come every year to the orchard on the day of procession, and then you stopped. I stopped coming when your father declared you old enough to accept gifts on your family's behalf, Sevrin said. Every year since, I presented my family's gift to you. Did you? Desimone heaved a sigh. I'm so sorry. I must not have recognized you. You meet hundreds, thousands of people every year. Sevrin waved his hands. You can't be expected to recognize one peasant. I should have recognized you. Desimone let her eyes rove over his face. You mean so much to me. Severin's cheeks flushed red. There we go. Tesco approached them. All finished cleaning up. Time to go back, then. Sevrin turned away from her. All good things must come to an end, I'm afraid. I wonder, Tesco, would you allow me to take some of the tea home? Desimone held her hands in front of her. I should like Mother to taste it. It was delicious. I have some right here. Tesco handed her a packet. A gift for you. Oh, and speaking of gifts, I almost forgot one of the reasons I invited you to tea. He whirled back into the cave. Can we hurry? Sevrin said after him. We need to get back before nightfall. What are you doing, Tesco? Desimone looked after him. In order to make amends for my terrible lapse in judgment, Your Highness. Tesco returned bearing a sack slightly bigger than she was. I would like to present you and your kingdom with this. He opened the sack. Gold trinkets glimmered in the fading sun. Wow, that's a lot of gold. Tesco! Desimone gaped at us. This is generous. Is this all for my kingdom? I believe it's fair market value for the damage I caused. Tesco scratched his cheek. Plus a little extra because I'm nice. Don't think I've forgotten you, human. Sevrin. There are several sacks of grain in the back. More than enough to replace what I damaged. This is incredible. Desimone placed a hand on Tesco's forepaw. Thank you. I hope this will serve as a symbol of our mutual goodwill. Tesco placed a hand on his heart. Sevrin examined the sack from all sides. There is no way we're lugging all this back to the palace. I shall carry it for you once your kingdom has granted me leave, because I would like to stay here. This land is bountiful, and I rather like this cave. It's close to my dear human friend. Sevrin started. You consider me a friend? Don't you consider yourself mine? Yes, Sevrin smirked, even if you are a bit of a nuisance. In any event, Tesco lowered his head close to Desimone. I do not wish to be a threat to your kingdom, Princess. However, I'm afraid after my previous actions, no knight will leave me alone. Tescophanes, my good dragon. Desimone gave a curtsy. Fret no longer. Once I return home, I shall call off the knights. When my parents return, I shall explain to my father we have nothing to fear from you. Thank you, Princess, Tesco said. Although I may have a hard time convincing him I spoke to you, Desimone said. Everyone believes dragons are mindless creatures. Tesco stroked his chin. I see your point. Does your father know much about dragons? He is a knight, after all. Then I know just the thing. Tesco sat on his hind legs and used the tip of his claws to pluck a single scale from his chest. But his scales were so closely layered that Desimone couldn't tell where it came from. A scale that covers the heart of a dragon. Tesco let himself fall on 4 feet again. Among my kind, it is a symbol of undying friendship. He handed it to Sevrin. Take it, Sevrin. As long as you have this, no dragon will attack you. You will be known as a dragon friend. As long as you live in Lauphah, I shall protect your city, provided your king grants me leave. Thank you, Tesco. Sevrin gazed at the palm-sized scale. Its surface shimmered in the light. If you present Sevrin bearing the scale before your king, I'm sure he'll believe you, Tesco said. Let me also give you this. He scooped out some of the gold and put it in a smaller sack. After placing the tea on top, he set the pack on Severin's back. A bit of dragon's gold. With all these tokens, he has to believe you. If he doesn't, I shall make him. Desimone smiled at Tesco. I should like the honor of being a dragon's friend as well. You already have it, Princess. Tesco said. Forgive me for interrupting, but the sun has nearly set. Sevrin motioned to the golden horizon. We should get the princess back to the castle. Right then. Tesco lay down. Can we, Tesco? Desimone glanced at Sevrin. You don't mind flying us? Of course not. Wonderful. Desimone let Sevrin help her up, and she settled in behind Tesco's head. Be sure you land far away from the city walls, Tesco. I don't want the knights to think you're attacking again. It is well thought of, Princess, Tesco said. Sevrin scrambled up and settled in behind her. Hold on tight. Gripping Tesco between the knees, he wrapped his arms around her waist and held her against him, a little too firmly and too familiarly. She was about to say something about it when Tesco launched himself into the air. Hang on, Tesco said as he took flight. All at once, Desimone understood why Sevrin held her so tightly. Her stomach dropped as Tesco drove to the ground. Her bottom left her seat, and it was only Sevrin who kept her from falling into the air. Tesco pulled up, went into a loop, and straightened out in flight. Once he'd settled into a steady wing beat, Sevrin released her. The first time I flew with him, he threw me off doing his tricks. I nearly fell out of the sky, Sevrin said, scooting back a little. You were perfectly safe, Tesco said over his shoulder. Caught you, didn't I? I'm not so sure he meant to throw me off, Sevrin whispered in Desimone's ear. Desimone giggled. Then I'm thankful you were here, Sevrin. Think nothing of it, Your Highness, Sevrin said, grinning. Desimone thought it was the cutest grin she had ever seen in her entire life.